Outbound for Dummies. This series brought to you by Outplay. It's designed to empower you with indispensable insights and strategies, helping you excel in your sales journey and also reach your sales goals. Hello, I'm Praveen, founder's office at Outplay, and I also oversee the GTM function. And hence, I decided to have a quick chat today with our speaker. Today, we shall discuss about how to master the art of sales as a modern day SDR. Let me repeat that, as a modern day SDR. And who better than Bryan to talk about this? Bryan, very happy to have you here today.
Praveen, thanks so much for asking me to join, and thanks for that intro. It's exciting to be here. I love the outbound strategy just in general. I built a career helping SDRs advance themselves, so it's a great topic. I'm excited to chat on it.
Thanks, Bryan. A quick introduction about Bryan for all the listeners. Bryan is the managing director at Elsesser Ventures. He's an advisor and consultant for a handful of SaaS companies. While he also runs many sales teams, he spends a lot of time coaching them as well, right? So do check out his LinkedIn page. A lot of amazing, jewels out there. Lovely. So let me reiterate the topic for all of you: how to master the art of sales as a modern day SDR. Bryan, I remember a year back at Outplay, we wanted to scale the SDR function. And I'm just going to synonymously use the word SDR, BDR, but function-wise, both are the same, right?
Yeah.
And getting those star reps wasn't easy. And I had to personally spend a lot of time to screen them. And once I do that, enabling them was a different ballgame altogether. Too many, players in the tech stack, too many tools today, right? So I'd like to understand a little more. Probably I should have spoken to you about a year back. Never late, right? Let me straight away jump on. Now, tell me this. How has the role of a sales development representative, an SDR, evolved over the past few years, right? Especially in the context of startups and SMBs.
Yeah, I think it's an important question. Thanks for asking it. So, my background has kind of ranged quite a bit through a variety of different softwares, but also markets. And I've seen the SDR function kind of play out throughout all of that. Most recently, as my former role as VP of Sales at SaaStr for 2 years, which was a very different SDR role that my team had than, let's say, my early days at Yext, when I was building out the first sales dev team for their partnerships division there. I think over the past few years, we've made leaps and bounds and in short time. And a lot of that has to do with tech, right? Tech has kind of enabled sales in a lot of different ways. And I also think it has had a lot to do with our buyer. The buyer has changed quite a bit. So maybe those are two really good, anchor points that we can work from. We can start with the buyer, right? Buyers expect more. So as buyers expect more, they expect you to be more knowledgeable. They expect you to be more mindful, right, of what's going on. And because they are, though, having those expectations, as a salesperson, not just sales development, but as a salesperson, we're required to do more, right? We're required to have a few extra steps done prior to doing that reach out. And I think that's really important. The spray and pray models of the past of, spraying out 500 emails a day, they're dead. If you're still doing that, cease doing that now. You're going to burn your market faster than you can blink. The metric that I had deployed at my most recent stint as VP of Sales at SaaStr was, look, it's better for you to write 10 really high quality emails each day than for me to hold you to any other metric. And that's because our audience were senior C-suite individuals at high performing tech companies. So if you sent a spray and pray, it was a waste of time and space. So that's part one. The other anchor point on tech, right? Tech is only getting more advanced. When I first started sales development, SalesLoft was really just coming of age. They were new. And so my team was using Excel sheets to manage steps. They were using Google Calendar to set reminders. It was very different than today, where I can set a sequence, and whether it's Apollo or SalesLoft or Outreach, I can have my
Outplay.
managed. Yeah, or outplay, excuse me. Yes. Right. I can have those steps managed.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, an important moment. Now, where's it going? And I think that is really the question many of us are asking. But I think, and I'm sure Outplay is encouraging this as well, but I think that having mindful interactions and individuals to run that is part one. And part two, we're going to see the deployment of AI here across teams. And softwares are going to use Web 3.0 and ChatGPT to empower those conversations and empower those interactions. And we're going to see some very interesting outcomes because of it.
Yep. Right. I mean, Ryan, the entire landscape has changed, as you said, right? So in these different times, challenging times also, I don't know what was the scene at the disaster that happened just a couple of weeks back, right? But like you said, the buyers have changed. So what do you think should SDR managers look for? What are those skills and qualities that a successful SDR should possess today, given the changing landscape of sales?
Yeah, look, and this is not just SDRs, frankly, in sales in general. I'm encouraging CROs and VPs of sales that are colleagues of mine to do the same. It's an efficiency model today. So, and that might, any SDR listening to this right now is, I'm not about to make friends, and I apologize, but like, here's the deal, y'all. Like, we spent probably 5 glorious years in tech, maybe almost 10 glorious years in tech, just with what seemed like unlimited VC money and the ability to scale companies with unlimited headcount and like no real look at cost, right? Like, yeah, there was a look at cost. It's a paintbrush, right? LTV on CAC is always a metric. The magic number is always a metric. But at the end of the day, outbound is generally the most expensive channel that we have. And it is because as we built these teams, we've kind of aligned these teams away from the metric that matters, which is revenue. We've aligned them to pipeline, and we've paid them on pipeline. But that's not a scalable model. And what we're finding, as you said, challenging times, it's challenging times for teams running outbound that are not deploying that team against the metric that matters, which is revenue. And so I've actually encouraged teams that, you mentioned I'm advising. I do a lot of advisory. I've encouraged teams to deploy a team against the revenue number. And that does mean that the sales development person, I've given them a new title, right? They're almost like sales associates or sales assistants, but they're something more than just the BDR motion. They're doing that, and right, they need to go and make sure they're bringing in new contacts for multi-threading. They need to make sure that they're understanding how things are moving down the funnel. They need to understand if things are missing exit criteria by stage of the sale, that they can help facilitate that access of information to get things moved down to further down the funnel and maybe past that exit criteria. An SDR should be working hand in hand with that account executive. And that is, if by doing that, sales teams will find better success with their SDR programs, and they'll find that they can actually hire more. But until we do that, we're going to see still high churn and burn in this era, in this environment, and in this title.
Pipeline to revenue, right? I mean, when you change the KPI by itself, the current SDRs are kind of used to generating pipeline. They aren't aligned to be tagged against revenue. So that's a huge mindset shift in the first place. Right? But let's assume that somebody is getting into an SDR function as a first-time salesperson, SDR, BDR. Again, coming back to what I asked you earlier, right? Moving from pipeline to revenue, 2 important skills they should possess. Or let's assume that I'm scaling the SDR function as an SDR manager. What should I look for? Is it like going back to the very traditional ways where sales guys used to get only revenue and numbers? And is that what we need to look for?
I think what we need to look for, I can name probably on one hand the SDRs, the number of SDRs that I consider as like some of the best I've ever worked with. And that's a challenge, right? Because I've managed several hundred people at this point in my career. And so many of them were so beyond excellent. And I've had an honor of really knowing them all and still being in touch with them all. But the ones that like, when someone said, well, what should I be hiring for? And the people that are in my mind that stick out, one thing there's always one thing in common. And I used to try to interview for it, right? But it's a very hard thing to interview for. And it is this willingness to go beyond the expectation.
Yeah.
And like anybody listening to this is like, that's fluff. Like, how do you measure for that, right? It's not fluff when you see it live. It's not fluff when you're getting text messages from that individual, not asked, didn't ask, unprovoked, at 11 p.m. at night, and they're also on Eastern time, right? And they're going, hey, I got this message out, this message back. What are your thoughts? Hey, I was about to send this out to schedule for tomorrow. Thoughts? And you're sitting there going, dude, go to bed, right? Like there that kind of effort and ethic. And there's someone that's in my head right now that's like, he gets more rejections than probably any other SDR I know. And like, I outwardly hear him laugh when it happens, right? Like whenever we're on a one-on-one, he's just like, yeah, whatever. I got another thing, and goes right into the positive momentum, does not even get sidetracked for a second about the environment he's selling in. They're intangibles. You can't interview for it. But what you can do, and what I encourage companies to do is take a 1099 contractor before offering full employment. I encourage this because you can put a trial period against somebody and see how they're working out before taking on the full cost of the hire. Now, for that individual in this environment, in an environment where jobs are not everywhere, where the opportunity is scattered, putting people into that environment, they're going to rise to the occasion or they're not. And if they're not willing to rise to the occasion, it wasn't meant to be. And I encourage it to move on.
Yeah. Makes sense, right? You were talking about a lot of tools today, right? I mean, back in the day, it was just a CRM, but then today, many tools, right? I mean, a huge influx of tools, revenue intelligence, sales intelligence, sales enablement, sales engagement, and all those things, right?
Yeah.
Is this actually helping the SDRs improve efficiency and effectiveness?
It's a great question because I used to think yes. And then I was adamant that it was yes. And these days I'm like, I'm not so sure and I don't think it's the tool's fault. I think there's an element of it's the team's fault. I put a post up as an example. Okay. I'm going to take it a little bit of a side and then bring it back. Okay. I put a post up on LinkedIn. I do a lot of content on LinkedIn, and I put a post up maybe, I don't know, a month ago or so. And it said, your sales stages, you do not need 7 sales stages for an SMB sale. Right. And like, in the moment I was working with a client that was doing this and like adamantly arguing for why they needed 7 stages. And like, I'm like, you need 3 tops. Right. And like just ripped it out. And what was interesting is to see how viral that went. Right. And when I'm speaking with these different founders that I'm working with, or some of the CROs that I'm working with, and they're asking how they should manage pipeline in Salesforce, or how they should manage pipeline in HubSpot, I've become like the anti-CRM. I'm an ops person nightmare. Okay. Because the thing is that our tools are getting in the way of our success. At SaaStr, our CRM, we use Salesforce. Okay. We were users of it, but not to its fullest extent. And I definitely didn't have an ops manager to manage it. The majority of what we actually managed in was Notion. And because it was real time, it was, what am I working on today? It was not this fluff of like, here's all my pipeline. Pipeline means nothing when you can just talk about here's what's actually working. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think to answer your question, is tools helping SDRs? No, I think right now tools are not helping SDRs. If anything, this is scary, but we're at a point of inflection for the SDR. What I mean by this is that tools, Outplay included, are going to evolve over the next 5 years to where the primary function that we define SDRs today by will go away. It'll be done for them. It will.
Yeah.
But the tool will enable that SDR or whatever we're going to call them for the next point of their career. We're not going to replace people. We're just going to replace a job function, and we're going to repurpose people towards revenue. That's what we're going to do.
Correct. On that note, right, I mean, you gave me a good lead, because like you said, there's a lot of activities that can be automated today, a lot of things that an SDR is doing today. Even market research, for example, you don't necessarily need to go through thousands of tools. If you have an intelligent system, if you say, hey, these are this is my ICP, these are the wins that I have in the last 3 months, get me similar companies. I'm sure, like you said, in the months to come, days to come, maybe there's going to be a tool that's going to pick all the similar companies and say, hey, reach out to this person, reach out to this company, and so on, right?
Yes.
But again, like you said earlier in the day, spray and pray is not going to work. You need good personalization.
Yes.
But what is the balance? How do you strike a balance between personalization and scalability, or probably automated scalability?
Well, this is where I think AI is going to help, right? I think that there's enough signal out there, right? So one thing we didn't talk about, what I'm working on right now. So I'm actually in stealth mode on a tech company of my own. We're about to launch,
nice.
right? And so, but like one thing you do when you're a founder is you take a lot of signal, right? You reach out to companies you want to sell to, you reach out to people that are going to use the product, and you're just trying to ask a lot of questions and uncover what's going on. So you want to take in lots of signal to see what's happening. And I think that's in essence what AI is also going to do. They're able to pull in signal. Where is an IP address spending time? What kind of things have people been following or interacting with? I mean, like even right down to your web browser cookies, there's some element of that will be re-engineered and repurposed at some point with AI. It's one of the, I had this conversation actually over the weekend with family that are not so tech savvy, but that have asked me about like, hey, like, where do you see AI coming in? How does this work? And one of the things I said is like, one of the big risk factors in AI is just not only how much information is already out there on the internet about individuals, but how it can so quickly use that information and regurgitate it, right? Use it to make actions and regurgitate it. And so there's an element of what will AI do? I think AI will wind up warming up the market in a way in which you're going to see more buyer centricity than sales. So let me go a step deeper on that for you. Buyer centricity, meaning I think that we've been heading towards an age of buyers being smarter and more geared to interact with our teams than ever before. And every time I take a sales training or I take some sort of like, here, they always start with this: 71% of your buyers are making a decision before they engage with you. And then you take another one, it's 81% of your buyers are making a decision before they engage with you. It's like how much of the sale is done prior to the engagement. That number's always gone up. And I think what AI will do is continue to bring that number up to the point where the decision comes down to not if they need your tech, but they're going to purchase your tech or a tech like it. It's up to you to help them buy yours. And I think that's where we're headed. So where I see things going, I think tech is going to enable buyer centricity. I think our teams are going to have to be geared to really help understand pain and impact of our customers and then match those two so they can buy our software over the competitor.
Got it. But again, little digressing from, how do we hire and or how do you perform as a great SDR today? That was, the topic. But let me digress a little bit here. Since you said that, it's going to be buyer-centric decisions, and then more than 90% are a lot more educated about what's available in the market.
Yeah.
So is Outbound going to be working? Is that going to be alive? Does an SDR be a job, I think get redundant?
Attribution model attribution is broken to begin with, right? Like we've always said, hey, like what's outbound, what's inbound, what's partnerships? And it's like, well, if you really look at the touch points our customers interact with a company, they hit all of these things. It's not just one or the other. It's you're going outbound to a customer, they see a webinar that's interesting, they join the webinar, but they're knowledgeable about your brand because the outbound engagement, they went to the webinar, now they like you more, now they're going to go a step further. So what was that, outbound or inbound, right? Like, and so attribution is broken. So let's start there. It's about that customer journey, though. How can you positively influence that customer journey? And a spray and pray email isn't going to do it, right? So today, the metric you can really hold reps to are positive interactions. Believe it or not, a phone is a working thing. No, I don't mean manual dialing. You do need a software like Orem or something out there to help get through the dials necessary.
Yeah.
But you still, a meaningful connection, meaningful interaction, a meaningful brand engagement. That's what the measurement should be. And so that should be meaningful email touch points. It should be meaningful phone calls. It should be meaningful LinkedIn connections. And I'm using this word meaningful on purpose. I get messages on LinkedIn constantly. Hey, Bryan, saw that we have mutual connections. And so therefore wanted to see if it might make sense for us to have a conversation about your advertising. What on earth does that mean? It doesn't mean anything to me. And right, like there's nothing meaningful about that interaction. Now, I have a group of people that engage with content, right? Throughout the year, those people that engage with my content, I engage back with them. That's kind of the key to social interactions, is to engage. At some point when I need something these days, I'm not reaching out cold anymore. Usually I'm reaching out saying, hey, we're connected through here. Super connection you and somebody else, and to your network and your following. What happens is they give back to you. So we need to get meaningful connections, no matter what we're doing. Find ways to provide value to the brands that we're interested in selling to, and they'll provide value back to us.
Right. So it boils down to the question, right? So when you have a team of SDRs, when you are creating that outbound function or the strategy for outbounding, how would you enable these SDRs, BDRs to provide value to the buyer or make the engagement with the buyer as meaningful as possible? How would your typical onboarding structure look like?
I think that it's a great question. I think that it's really about education of your SDR beyond a 2-week, here's how you do sales. Education of the SDR about who it is that has been buying from you over the years and why people are engaging with you and find you interesting. For instance, right? One of the SDRs I had hired at SaaStr, we educated him on, hey, here's the profile of people that usually attend SaaStr. Here's the profile of people that usually buy from SaaStr. And when we reach out, here's why they engage with us, right? Here's the reasons behind the value that we provide that company, the value that we provide long-term to that company. Here's also what is the perceived value, a little different than the actual value. What's the perceived value? And we educate this moment as far as we can, so that then the test becomes to the SDR. So if I gave you this person, what would the engagement look like in your perspective? And so now you're talking about, perhaps different points that the two brands have engaged, or different videos that might make sense to that person in that stage company, or different people they might need to meet in order to be successful. And you're brokering relationships, but you're also brokering your own. That's meaningful connections. Those are meaningful interactions. Anything else is noise. And here's I think the biggest risk, if you will, to outbound these days. You said, well, outbound still exists, is one of your questions earlier, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing this thing called nearbound come up, right? It's actually coined by the people at Partner Hacker. They just coined it the other day. It said nearbound, it's a new company name.
Yeah.
Nearbound is this idea that like there's outbound and inbound, but there's also these deals in your back pocket. You have companies that you have relationships with that your friends want relationships with that don't have relationships with, and you can help broker relationships. Well, that's just outbound on steroids, right? Like that's what that is. If we're doing outbound correctly to cold prospects, we're engaging our network for help. So everything needs to be meaningful and intentful, and shouldn't be just wasted time and space and energy. And I think if you can create KPIs around that, you'll find that your team has much more successful outcomes over the next year.
Right. But what should be the level of patience for the SDR manager, right? I mean, since you were talking about KPIs around meaningful value-added conversations, or even nearbound outreaches, right? So what typically should be KPIs for SDRs? How long till the time they probably bring in, or they help in the first sale? They work closely with the AE, but still, get to that first sale. What are the top 3-4 KPIs that you would look at?
Do your sales math, understand conversion, right? Understand meeting
Correct.
to qualified to funnel to closed won pipeline, right? Understand your conversion metrics. Understand up to what point an SDR can really make impact, right? Typically that's somewhere around the proposal was sent out, right? Maybe build your compensation model around that action of point of decision, right? Because at that point, beyond point of decision, there's really nothing else for the SDR to do. The AE really has to close the deal. So maybe point of decision is that payment metric versus qualification, right? Maybe then if that's your primary point of KPI, maybe then you're also incentivizing that SDR team for the closed won deal. Call it spiff dollars or something else, but some extra money as like a thank you. Your KPIs though, and this is where it's got to change, and it's got to change from the top down. The SDR manager is looking for KPIs around like number of dials today, number of touch points today, right? That's broken. And that's only being driven by top leadership. Leadership needs to change the conversation to revenue and tell your SDR leader, you're actually going to be judged on revenue. Here's the deal. Every SDR leader, whether they are or not told that they are being judged on revenue, is judged on revenue. So let's get the revenue conversation going. It's not about qualified pipeline. And if you can get that up front, then everything becomes clearer on what the KPIs are because you work your sales math. I know in order to get a deal in funnel, and in order to get my number of contracts out, I need to have X number of interactions, meaningful interactions per month. And that is really then the metric, right? So like work backwards from your math.
Yeah. But if there are two people both, targeting revenue, SDRs and the AE, how do you reduce the blame game, right? One's going to say, hey, I got good opportunities, AE did not convert, vice versa. You know how that goes, right? So how do you reduce the blame game?
Yeah, fire anyone that blames anybody else. Let's start. Okay, and you're laughing, but I think teams lack extreme ownership, and that's a book that was written by Jocko Willink, right? But if anybody's willing to point a finger and say I'm not successful because of this person, that person needs to get off your team because they're in the way of your success. You need to have people that own the funnel completely and own the mission completely at every stage. An SDR should feel it viscerally when a deal doesn't close. An AE should feel it viscerally when a deal doesn't close. And they should each be so dialed in to the engagement that they're working together to achieve results, not blaming each other for what doesn't work.
Lovely. That's definitely a key takeaway for me as well, right? How do you see the SDR's career pathway growing? I mean, once they start as an SDR, maybe, they get experience in the SMB space, maybe. What should they look for in the, years to come? How do you think they can transition into different roles if they'd like to?
Yeah, look, I've seen SDRs do everything from go on to sales leadership to go into marketing, IT, HR, market. It's like there's product. I've seen them do everything. That only helps us because the more people that have customer experience getting into other ventures is the better, right? Because it just helps get the company aligned around the customer driven mission. But that said, what should it be? It should be whatever people want it to be. There are SDRs that want to be SDRs. It's funny. I actually think it's an American framework in a way. I know there are other countries involved here, but it's an American framework that gave the expectation that SDRs should be about an 18-month role. Okay. That's an American framework. That's crap. I worked at Aircall for a while and led their sales dev program. And what was amazing about the French SDRs was that they were there like 3 years, 4 years. They didn't need to move on. They liked the work they did. Now, eventually they get tired of it. They want to move on to something else, but some of them just really just love opening pipeline. So why move that person, right? Like we give this expectation, well, it's the grunt work. Is it? Some people just love the hunt, right? You're actually going to see a return of the full cycle salesperson in a lot of companies, especially younger companies. You're going to see that be more the norm. And because we're going to see that more and more and more, really, it's really about understanding that you could be a hunter for your career and love it, and that's okay.
Yeah. Lovely. So, and how do you think SDRs keep themselves agile? I mean, where do they learn from? Apart from following you on LinkedIn, any other ways you feel that they can learn continuously? Because new
100%.
tools, new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
How do you think they should keep themselves updated?
One of the companies I advise for right now is called Pavilion. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're the largest community in the world for professional development. And within Pavilion, every member has access to things like Pavilion University, which is literally school after school after school, from sales development to AE to the art of listening, LinkedIn social selling, the basics of leadership, leading to accountable teams. Like it's hundreds of courses, and it's written by like Jocko Vanderkooy of Winning by Design, Insight Partners, everything else, right? Like you need to be a part of things like that to up-level your career. You need to understand that like there's more than just your function that move the revenue number. And it is a cross-functional job, sales. It's not just the sales department. You need to be cross-functional. You need to know marketing and ops and how your role affects the overall outcome of the company. You need to know that thing. And so, like, for instance, GTM United, Scott Leese's company, right? That is an incredible place for SDRs to go and learn and engage and network and find actual like deals that might be out there that they can call sourced. So that's another place, right? That's a good investment. But here's the piece, right? A lot of companies don't have an L&D budget, and they don't have extra monies, especially this year. So the reality is like, how much financially is a individual person willing, especially on limited pay schedules, willing to invest in themselves? I had to learn this kind of the hard way, because I kept waiting for companies I was working for to provide me with the skills I needed to be good, and learned very quickly that wasn't going to come as fast as I needed it to. I was being asked and demanded on results, but not given the opportunity to learn how to produce those results. So I needed to create that for myself. So as hard as that might sound, it is a write-off at the end of the year. But go and invest in yourself. Go find a few places to spend a couple of bucks and invest in yourself and learn. And you're going to find by doing so, you're going to take your career to 3, 4, 5, 10x what it is today in very short form, just because you did something that your peer group isn't typically doing.
Lovely. I mean, like you said, invest in yourself. I think one of the ways I'm investing on myself is by talking to people like you. Before we close, right? I think 2 important takeaways from me. I think everybody should know that. I am also I will go back to the drawing board with my head of sales probably, and then 2 things I'm going to change definitely is the KPIs for our SDRs, right? Look at it differently, and probably the new ones. How do we enable them to provide value and have more meaningful conversation? These are 2 key takeaways for me personally, and I'm sure for all those listeners, there are a lot many, right? Bryan, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts before we, close this session today?
I think, look, the end of the day, there's a couple things. I'll give you 2 closing thoughts. First is that people care. Typically, they care about the work they're doing. And if they don't care, those are individuals that it's okay to let go in this environment. And I'm not someone that is avidly go let go of your team. That's not it. But it's find the people to work with that care. That's the best thing you can possibly do. The second thing is understand that efficiency works. You don't need a team of 20 in order to grow. You might just need a team of 10 really decent performers. And so if your team's not performing, that doesn't mean let go of the people who aren't performing. It means you really need to take ownership over the fact, are you providing enough resources for that person to perform? Are you giving them the ability to be engaged? Are you providing them ways to want to stay? And so think really long and hard about your ownership over the outcomes of your team. And too often we're looking the opposite direction as opposed to looking inwardly at ourselves. So That would be what I would say.
Lovely, lovely. Thanks, Bryan. Lovely speaking with you today. Great having you. Amazing thoughts. I'm sure a lot of them are going to be reaching out to you for help and improve themselves as SDRs.
I hope they do. And thank you, Praveen, for the time today. It was great to talk to you.
Thanks, Bryan. Thanks, everyone. That was another session from Outplay on Outbound for Dummies. Follow us for more at outplayhq.com. Thank you so much.